Chapter 10. Toad's luck runs out. Toad's self-congratulation upon his escape from his lordship's house was short-lived, for he soon discovered that stealing a chimney-sweep's bicycle is a very different thing from riding one. For one thing, at their greatest extension, its pedals were rather further off than his toes could comfortably reach. For another, the hard leather saddle seemed to have all sorts of bumps, knots, and protuberances that made Toad sore in places where he preferred not to be sore. And for a third, the handlebars and frame were made of crude, wrought iron, and therefore very heavy indeed, rather than the fine, strong, light, tubular steel he might have hoped for, and for which he would have been only too happy to pay had he had the chance. As it was, this was not a bicycle made for Toad, and his progress down the hill, to him almost endless, carriageway was sporadic and wearisome. So that by the time he reached the meadowed road beyond and turned thankfully southwards in what he hoped would be the general direction of home, he was already tired. Yet, flawed though Toad's character was in so many ways, it had certain strengths and resources upon which he could draw if the occasion demanded, and no occasion was more demanding of him than a threat to his life, to his limbs, and to his liberty. It will be no surprise, therefore, that weary and saddle-sore though he already was, and very ready to abandon the bicycle altogether, when soon after leaving the private road and joining the public one, he heard the unwelcome baying and barking of a pack of hounds heading in his direction. Vigor returned to his thin, spent legs. More than vigor, indeed, for the baying grew more fearsome, and the barking closer and more vicious. Toad's legs veritably pumped like pistons at the awkward pedals, and what had been slow progress soon became very rapid indeed, as gasping with that most stimulating of combinations, fear-laced with terror, he sought desperately to escape the bloodthirsty beasts that seemed now to be upon his trail. To add to his alarm, there came the dread sounds of a hunting horn, sharp and terrifying, and worse still, the thunder of approaching hoofs, and the sickening yodels and cries of huntsmen and women. Then the final remorseless horror, along the road behind him, and near enough for him to hear, the soft pant, pant, pant of their mouths, and the gentle pad, pad, pad of their paws, as the hounds came ever closer. Ahead, appallingly, the road steepened, and his pace began to slow, and it suddenly dawned on Toad that somewhere along this anonymous, wintry, miserable stretch of road, he might finally meet his end. It was not a pleasant thought, for on those occasions in the past when he had imagined what his end might be, and there had been a good few such occasions, some quite recent, he had always believed that his demise would be a glorious one, a great one, heroic to the last. A calm came upon him, which, though it made the panting and the slavering of the hounds just behind seem all the more inexorable, gave him pause to say to himself what he imagined might be his last words. I shall stop and turn and face them. I shall confront them. I shall be a terrifying Toad, and they shall flee before my courage and ferocity. In the madness of his desperation, for the calm he felt was entirely illusory, Toad convinced himself that the chimney-sweep's broom, if wielded with sufficient confidence and power, would serve as cutlass and blunderbuss combined, and he readied himself for his last stand. A moment more, indeed, and he might have kept from his metal mount, broom in hand, climbed the adjacent verge to gain height, and turned to rout the baying hordes, but it was not to be. Even as he loosened his grip on the handlebars and reached down to take the brush, there was an ear-splitting blast on the hunting horn, a surge of canine paws and snarling yelps just behind his rear wheel, a clatter of horses' hoofs onto the road behind him, and in his abject fear and fright, Toad's front wheel wobbled and mounted the verge that was to have been his bulwark and front line. I'm so sorry. My nose is so itchy. I'm like really hoping I have a tissue. I do. Oh, sorry. I have to stop. It's like killing me. Slight pause. Sorry. It's like, I don't even have to blow it. I just have to itch it. Like a lady. Ow. I don't know what it is. Ow. It's like right there. I just didn't want to look like I'm picking my nose. Alright. Wow, reading. Okay. I might have to do that again in a minute. Sorry. I don't know what's going on. Stop it. Allergies. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Toad shot forward over the handlebars, turned head over heels through the air, and plunged deep into the leafless and prickly hedge. He had some final sense of slobbering tongues about his face, and scenting snouts upon his clothes, and a fleeting image of the bellies of flying horses, and the flapping of hunting red, before all was darkness, and all a growing silence, made the deeper for the gradual retreat of those sounds and persons and animals that had brought him so very near his end. Painfully, achingly, Toad pulled himself from the blackthorn hedge and looked about. Not a person, nor a horse, nor a solitary hound in sight, only his sweeps, brush, and bag, and the bicycle, buckled now and useless. I fooled them, cried the panting, bruised, and bloodied Toad. I put them off the scent. So near death, and yet I have escaped. Who would dare not agree that I am the greatest, cleverest Toad alive? Were the hounds of hell itself after me, I would escape them. Ha ha. Thus, Toad, sitting on the verge, dressed and sooted as a chimney sweep, satisfied himself that his luck was the product of his own cleverness. Then, triumph once more, he rose unsteadily to his feet and eyed the bicycle. "Oh, metal steed," said he, "it grieves me to leave you here, for you were faithful, like no other, and you gave your life to me. I shall give you an honorable burial, and ever remember you in my prayers." With some difficulty, for it was heavy and every muscle and bone of his body ached, Toad took up the bicycle and ported it across the road to the ditch, into which he unceremoniously threw it, lest some busybody or other passing by should see it and use it as evidence that he had passed that way. As for the hunt, and what its quarry might have been, which had been of such life and death importance to Toad moments before, it mattered not one whit to him now. He had lived to tell the tale, and tell it he certainly would in the most heroic terms at the earliest opportunity. Meanwhile, he must away. He picked up his bag and brushes, liberally dusted his face and clothes with soot again to maintain his disguise, and with a resigned and weary sigh, as of the hero who has survived another crisis but expects to face many more ere his return home, he set off down the road once more, this time by foot. It must be said that by that same evening, Toad's heroic view of himself had declined somewhat, for already saddle-sore he was now foot-sore as well, and hungry and thirsty. He had hoped that some opportunity for respite might have come from a passerby, but there had been none at all. His escape from the hunt had convinced him that his disguise was a good one, and so, far from having any fear of meeting people he now positively yearned to, and was coming to the conclusion that the road he was on was as minor and as unimportant as could be. But just as passers-by were absent, so were crossroads, and therefore any hope of changing direction towards somewhere busier, which might offer him greater opportunity, he had no inclination at all to try crossing country, not only because he had little idea where he was, but also because a chimney sweep upon a road might pass muster, but one perambulating the fallow fields and jumping the dikes was sure to arouse suspicion in a hostile world. So Toad plodded on, hopeful, if not fully confident, that his persistence would finally be rewarded. Oh my gosh. Stop. I'm sorry. The glimmer. It was this eye yesterday. What are we doing? Okay. Chill out. Okay. The glimmer of a chance did not come till dusk began to settle in, by when, in addition to various aches and pains, hunger and thirst, there came upon Toad the first painful tinglings of the bitter cold, which would only get worse as the winter's night drew in. It was indeed a glimmer that he saw in the gathering gloom to the right of the road ahead. Coming nearer, he saw it was the light at the windows of a delightful roadside cottage, which even in the near dark Toad could see was of the kind whose simple garden borders would burgeon forth with snowdrops and daffodils the moment winter was past, and whose elevations would be bedecked with honeysuckle once summer had come. For now he told himself that he could surely expect a warm, if simple, welcome from whatever common peasant or laborer lived there, and perhaps the overnight use of the barn he espied nearby. Surely all the more so, he mused as he went confidently up the garden path, seeing that he himself would appear a common fellow from a similar station in life to those in this humble house, and thus worthy of their sympathy and temporary support. On my return to Toad Hall, Toad vowed silently as he rat-tat-tatted at the door, I shall send these poor folk some provisions to see them through the winter, out of gratitude for what they are about to do for me. But any further good intentions Toad may have had were nipped in the bud when he heard a rough and assertive female voice on the far side of the door say, Is that you, ducks? Followed by something even more odd as far as Toad was concerned. Look lively, you lot. Pa's home. The door was quickly opened, and Toad got a much warmer welcome than even his normal overconfidence gave him any right to expect. For there she was, vast in a lateral sense, huge in her greeting, monumental in her embrace. Lord's me, said she, grasping the surprised Toad with a brace of arms as rotund as plump pheasants. It's my beloved come home at last. Nor did this mistake in identity falter one bit when thrusting him from her, but holding him upright, with a passion that was almost savage, she said, Ducks! Again, and kissed him first on one sooty cheek and then the other. This greeting so astonished Toad that for some moments he was quite incapable of speech, let alone rational thought, and all he could do, as she held him up and eyed her Adonis adoringly, was to stare dumbfounded first at her and then beyond the threshold of her. No, their home. The children, his children, as she seemed to accept, stood by the bright hearth, all 5 of them, all boys of descending size, all rotund, and all sooty replicas of something between her and, well, himself. On the mantel, quite unmistakable, was a doggerel type of bewhiskered sweep, complete with brushes, beneath whose sooty form were inscribed in an uneducated hand the words, R. Gramp. Above this, attached to the walls, as if it might be a hunter's trophy from the good years gone by, or a weapon brought home from the Crusades, was the final evidence Toad needed to tell him to where fate so malign, so unjust, so malevolent had brought him. An ancient sweep's brush of polished hickory, its brass screws and ferrules as bright as a sergeant major's buttons. Welcome home, Pa! Chorused the quintet of youths, their smiles bright as the brass above their heads. It must be said that for a moment Toad actually weakened. He was perhaps overtired from the long day and overstrained from his close shave with the pack of hounds, so that, though he realized that he had arrived at the very cottage where the sweep he had earlier duped actually made his home, and that due to the brilliance of his disguise, the sweep's wife had mistaken him for the sweep himself, Toad was tempted not to disabuse her of her mistake. In this moment of weakness, Toad saw the advantages of his plan in a rosy light. For one thing, there was a hot meal that was undoubtedly his for the asking, for he could smell it, and see and hear something like a thick stew with dumplings simmering away upon the range. For another, drink was certainly to hand as well, for There, hanging above the hob, ready and willing, was a large pewter tankard, all ready to be filled with beer, or cider, or some other rustic brew. But the temptations were not purely gluttonous. There was a large and comfortable armchair in full view of where Toad stood, upon which, had he had the chance to examine it more closely, he would not have been surprised if in such a warmly domestic establishment as this there might have been a plaque upon which was inscribed Pa's Own. Lastly, in some ways the most tempting of all, was a little door that stood ajar, and through which Toad could see a simple staircase leading to the rooms above, in one of which he had no doubt at all was a large, comfortable, soft bed awaiting his hard-used body. Those, then, were mighty temptations, but Toad was not so far gone as to yield to them without some vestigial thought of the consequences, nor to delay matters for a few moments by saying, in what he imagined was a rude and rustic way, "Ain't you going to ask me what I've been delayed for? Delallied for? Out of what? I'm sorry. Out of what? I can't do. I'm sorry. It's when the page cuts a word in half and you have to connect them. I don't know what it is. Out of what repository of his former lives these extraordinary words and sounds came from, Toad dreaded to think, but out they came and they served. Bless you, Ducky. I forgot her voice. Hold on. I lost it. Sorry. I don't usually break this much. It's gonna be Southern. I can't do anything but Southern now. Bless you, Ducky, but you're not even out the code yet. It's that bone shaker of a bicycle, said Toad, procrastinating. Failed off again? Did, said Toad. Now I looks at your face. I can see it's swolled. Swole bad, said Toad. Those temptations which had loomed so hard a moment before now rapidly receded before the dreadful dangers that began to loom in their place. These were, first of all, the quintet of youths, his sons and heirs, it seemed, all scruffy, all sooty, all about to launch themselves upon his person. Beware! A warning voice in Toad cried out. Then there was the galvanized bathtub he had spied, already steaming and surrounded by any number of bars of carbolic soap, flannels, towels, brushes, and even, and this surprised Toad in so humble a home, a long and scratchy-looking loofah. Take heed, cried that voice once more, but lastly, worst of all, worse in many ways than a pack of slavering hounds, was the sweep's eager, potent, gargantuan wife. If she who seemed to love her partner so well knew him so ill that she could mistake him for Toad, to what bounds beyond dreadful imagining might such a woman's passion lead when there was no if about it, not with the bathtub at the ready. She realized that what she had within her grasp was not her husband, but someone new. Escape this fate while you can, Toad's inner voice wisely commanded. With a wild and dramatic gesture, Toad cried, Came to say I got to work late tonight, my love. Be back afore the dawn. And without more ado, he turned and ran out into the wintry night, never looking back, despite the heart-rending calls and cries of, Pa! Pa! Oh, Pa! But finally these grew faint, as did the glimmering and once welcome light, and for the first time in his life, Toad came to see how it could be that the shelter of a hedgerow might be as good and safe a place as any to spend the night. What? Sorry, I'm still... Okay. Of the days that followed, which were some of the darkest and bitterest of Toad's eventful life, even he rarely spoke. Whatever he might think... I'm losing it. Whatever he might like to think he was, whatever he might once have known himself to be, the fact was that through those wandering winter days, Toad was no more than a common tramp. His disguise seemed to serve him well enough, but if he fancied himself a tradesman chimney sweep, trained, skilled, and experienced, the world saw him as one who had fallen on hard times and could no longer find employment. He found charity enough along the way, and when the weather worsened and the hedge was too cold a shelter, the kindly folk would let him sleep in their barn if they had one, or the pigsty, if it was not already occupied. As for food, well, a bowl of gruel and dry bread was enough to keep him going, and he accepted it with a word of thanks and a humble doffing of his cap. If words of complaint came to his mouth or a sense of misery and despair, he had only to remember that pack of hounds, or ponder for a moment the chimney sweep's wife, unwelcome embrace, and there it might have led him to know that he was lucky to be alive, free, and unencumbered. Winter, he told himself, would not last forever, and anyway, if only he could get his bearings, he might find his way back to the river, and thence to Toad Hall, and all the home comforts that awaited him there. It may seem strange that he found getting home so difficult, but his flying machine had taken him to pastures strange and new, far afield from anywhere he had ever been before, and nothing seemed quite the same on this far side of the town to which his destiny had brought him. In any case, and this was perhaps rather more to the point, he had a certain reluctance to return to Toad Hall, for that would mean he must face something as unpalatable as those many trials and dangers from which he had only barely escaped. For the badger and the rat and the mole would be awaiting him, always assuming, of course, that the last two were still alive. How could he ever face them? Mole, whom he had deserted in his hour of need, rat, whom he had to all intents and purposes hurled from his flying machine, and badger, who had trusted him but whom he had fooled so easily and left locked up in his smoking room, where, for all Toad knew, he might still be. So Toad's wanderings, avoiding the town as he now had to, and the river out of cowardice, were roundabout and aimless. Perhaps he hoped that when spring came he might be allowed to turn over a new leaf, which done, he might slip quietly back into his own domain, reoccupy Toad Hall, and live a modest, charitable life, from which all thought of machines and escapades would this time be permanently banished. These cheerless ruminations preoccupied Toad during those lost and wretched days, when the world, which owed him nothing, gave him rather more charity than he deserved. Perhaps such thoughts sustained Toad then, and kept him moving on, hopeful in some way of eventual rather than immediate change. The weather improved, and though it was not true that spring was in the air, at least winter seemed a little more out of it than before. Here and there a snowdrop showed, and sometimes when he woke and found himself lying on the dank and chilly ground, the bright yellow petals of winter aconite had burst forth with the dawn to cheer him on his way. It was on such a morning, with the sun shining brighter than had been its wont, that Toad saw that he was approaching a village. He saw its church tower from afar, and was passed more than once along the way by carriages, both horseless and horse-drawn, filled with people dressed in what seemed to be their Sunday best, though it was not Sunday. "They can't be going to pray," thought Toad, "for they're all too merry for that. There must be a wedding on. Here, surely I may find sympathetic folk who in the happiness of the moment will give a poor chimney sweep, a shilling or two, or perhaps something more. Oh, what would I do to have enough to stay a night in some friendly hostelry?" Thus Toad spun simple hopes and pleasures as he went along, waving almost cheerfully to the wedding guests as they passed him by upon the road. This is certainly a big wedding, thought Toad as he came nearer, and his eyes grew a little more keen, for a sizable occasion might swell that shilling to a florin, or even a half-guinea. The nearer he got, the greater and more impressive the assembly about the little church seemed to be. What with carriages great and small, 2 or 3 automobiles of the most modern sort, all color, brass and wheels. There were crowds of guests, the men in formal morning wear, the women in their finest finery, and yet bigger crowds of onlookers, some almost as finely dressed as the guests, others of the lower and common orders, and even more rudely dressed than Toad. By the time he reached the church's ancient lich gate and stopped to stare, it seemed that the guests had all arrived and had gone into the church and out of sight. The groom had long disappeared into the interior, and though Toad made efforts to find out who the lucky pair might be, no one was much interested in talking to him, for they were all eagerly waiting for the bride to arrive. This she soon did, and prettily too, for it seemed she lived in the Regency Manor, right opposite the church, and from there she was now processed by her father, a tall white-haired gentleman who walked as proudly as if he were about to marry her himself. Well, might he be proud, for if a couple were going to get married on a winter's day, they could not have hoped for better. Bright sunshine and a clear blue sky, a churchyard filled with daffodils jeweled with dew, and those same snowdrops and aconites that Toad had seen beginning to appear in days past, now in full bloom, all busy and eager about the verges and stone walls of village, house, and church. Toad should not be blamed if in the excitement of these charming moments he failed to notice some last-minute arrivals. There were, for example, a brace of bishops, all purple and black with silvery white hair. Along with these, and a fine compliment to them, were a quartet of footmen of the tallest, most aquiline, and most senior sort, the kind indeed that one might think would only deign to accept service in, at the very least, a lord's employ. Yet Toad did get an inkling of the danger he was in, for following this holy twain and haughty four, there slipped out of a black shiny vehicle, discreetly tucked away down a nearby lane, no less than an octet of men in blue. The police. Into the church they plodded, senior officers all, their uniforms giving off that sudden flash of iridescent color, such as an idle occupier of a riverboat might briefly catch a glimpse of when a kingfisher flashes by. This glimpse Toad caught, and though he did not realize its import at the time, it left him feeling vaguely uneasy, as if he knew something was not quite right, but could not work out what. He shook his head, he frowned, he shivered slightly, and then he overrode his instinct, which was to flee, and flee fast, and fought the pressing crowds to keep his vantage point by the church gate from which to enjoy the wedding scene. The bride and her father crossed the village green to cries of "Good luck" and "Bless you!" and in they went. By order of the manor, a hot toddy and mince pies were handed out to the assembled throng as they waited outside during the wedding service, gossiping and chattering cheerfully till, guessing that the service was nearly done, they began to fall silent in expectation of hearing the wedding march from the organ inside and seeing the church door thrust open and the happy couple emerge. Toad was carried away by the spirit of it all and made lightheaded by the availability of free food and easy drink, so that he pushed himself forward with the best and worst of them, raised his brushes in the air, and joined in a song or two. Having missed the warning signs of the arrival of bishops and footmen, and failed to respond to the dangers implicit in a police presence, Toad might still have realized his mortal danger when one of the crowd said to him, "Here officially, are you?" "Me?" said Toad, not understanding at all. "On duty, like?" The fellow grinned and laughed, and Toad thought it best to laugh back, if only he had understood. "Here comes the bride!" the shout went up, for the church doors were being flung open, and the vigorous strains of the wedding march came out into the wintry morning. At first all was well, for what harm can there be in a happy bride and her new-made groom? What possible threat from proud parents? What danger in aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, friends and Bishops? Whispered Toad to himself, alarm bells ringing as yet only distantly in his mind, as the brace of bishops he had not seen earlier emerged, followed by one whose purple was even purpler, and whose embroidered chest supported a cross that was ominously larger than all the others, and whose shepherd's crook positively glittered with high holiness. Toad gulped, and his eyes grew a little wider as he stared upon the face of this ethereal person, for he knew him, and his visage struck sudden terror into Toad's heart, for my Lord Bishop was the same one whom Toad had seen from on high, unwillingly perched as he himself had then been in a hothouse roof. But even as Toad vainly sought to back away, the crowd now being too thick behind him, the footmen emerged, and with them the ghastly sight of that same butler whom Toad had so successfully bamboozled into serving him sweetmeats and nectars in bed. Prendergast. Him! Gasped Toad, suddenly realizing that the wedding he was witness to involved, on the groom's side, the son and heir of the house where he, Toad, had been for 3 days a cuckoo in the nest. He struggled to back off once more, but it was no use, for the crowd grew thicker still behind him. Then before Toad's shocked eyes there issued forth from the church porch more police than he had ever set eyes upon even in his nightmares. Perhaps by now his mind was fevered, and he saw more than there really were. But out they came like bees from a hive, and at their head, the bride's godfather, it would seem, was the police commissioner himself. Was the groom's father then his lordship? He is, groaned Toad as he too emerged, striking to sink towards the ground, but quite unable to, since he was supported by the crowd behind and the church gate in front. Toad's nightmare now gathered about him apace and began to overtake him. A photographer appeared with an apprentice carrying his paraphernalia, which was set up in front of the church for portraits to be taken. The flashes of the lights were like warning beacons across the heavy seas in which Toad now found himself struggling. Yet still he might escape, he thought, simply by staying still and unnoticed in the great thronging crowd. Who would bother with a simple toad, thought Toad hopefully, forgetting in whose garb he was disguised. The sweep! Bring him out here for luck! The chimney sweep! Toad had been espied by the photographer's eager and sharp-eyed assistant. A chimney sweep... Why would they play music? Sorry. A chimney sweep always brought good luck to a wedding scene, and an extra guinea for the photographer who thought of providing one. Willing hands reached out to the reluctant and desperately self-effacing Toad. No, no, he cried. But it was no use, and even as he was hauled out before them all and placed between the bride and groom, and even as that happened, the police and footmen formed a guard of honor to frame and complete the picture, of which, to the shared delight of both the wedding party and the crowd, the chimney sweep, alias Toad, was now the very center. Flash and flash again. And just one more, cried the photographer. Try to smile this time, chimney sweep. You look quite sick. Oh, the merriment, oh, the laughter, and oh, what a haze of ecstasy Toad was suddenly in. He smiled, he laughed, he guffawed, for he was triumphant after all. He had no need to be afraid. His disguise was perfect, and he remained utterly undetected. Another, cried out Toad. Oh my gosh. Exulting in his position and causing even more merriment. My right profile is by far the best. Oh folly, oh vanity, oh pride, how great and swift its downfall can be. There was a commotion in the crowd, an accusatory cry, and then a shrieking female voice, all too familiar to Toad, which said, That's no chimney sweep, that's a toad. It's the Toad, the impostor who tried to steal my heart. And there she stood at the church gate, even more massive in her anger and outrage than she had been in her domestic welcome, the chimney sweep's wife. He'd done away with my old man to take its place, she screeched. He's a murderer, I tell you. No charge could ever have been more clearly or more baldly stated, or expressed so well in its simplicity the heinous crime, the motive, and the victim's suffering as that. He'd done away with my old man to take his place. Perhaps Toad spoke, but more than likely he did not. He remembered a final flash of light, no doubt the photographer's last photograph. He remembered better still 8 flashes of blue and 4 of black, and 2 of accusatory purple. Then all was lost forever as Toad was arrested, handcuffed, put into leg irons, manhandled into a shiny, windowless automobile, and off on his bumpy way towards a dungeon deep within a castle great and grim. Down long, steep stone steps he was escorted, along rough, hewn corridors and passageways, past bars and impregnable nail-studded doors, till he was held fast and deep and close confined, where hope was gone forever, and bleak despair could surely be his only friend. Toad was at liberty no more. Oh, the end. Thanks for listening. Sorry, I don't usually like to break in the middle of chapters, but I don't know. Oh. Yeah, thanks for listening. Also, John, thank you. Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Well, yeah. That one was just all about Toad. We have also, it's been a while. I'm back. I'm trying to see, like, when was our last read aloud? Hold on. La la la. I forgot to check. Let me see. That was. I was right. I thought it was September. It was September. So hey, I'm back. Let's see. We don't have that much left. Habeas Corpus is the next one. And then Winter's End. Is that the last? Oh, guys. We only have 2 more chapters. I didn't know that. They're so long. I really thought we were only halfway through, and then I read that one, and now we only have 2 more. Okay, so I was gonna give an update, but like, I don't know. Nobody's watching. If you came back and you're watching now, I've been sick. Like from October to December, like all through those 3 months. I bounced back January, and now I feel good mentally, emotionally. I'm still obviously like, I still have like chronic health problems, but I was doing the read aloud with those anyway, so but what was I thinking? Oh, also with work, my January is when we're like January through March or April is when we're really busy. So I've been trying to get back into the read aloud all of January. It's just, it takes a lot of energy. If you don't want to hear me stutter too much. And I just really felt up to it today. So, hey. Yeah. Okay, so we only have 2 more chapters, so I don't have as much time as I thought. Because I already decided, excuse me, I already decided the next book we're going to read. Actually, I didn't decide, well, I guess I did, whatever. I asked for y'all's feedback and suggestions, and I got several. So I went with somebody's idea for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't know what it's about at all. I never saw it, never read it, so I need to track that down and buy it within. We got 2 more chapters. That's crazy. And then that'll be our next book. And then I don't know what's after that. Maybe I'll take another suggestion. I was thinking Little Women, but like, I might still do that. I own it, so I could do that. But anyways, yeah. So Excuse me very much. For real, it takes it out of you. But anyway, if anyone's watching, I don't think anyone is. Oh, well, somebody's here. I was gonna say, right after this, I'm about to go, like, make something real quick for dinner, and then we're gonna do a movie night, too, tonight. I'm being a lot more adamant on spending time with you guys. So, like, I want a good balance between YouTube and Discord stuff with you guys on the weekdays. So, if you're not a part of my Discord yet, you can join if you want. You don't have to. Especially if you're gonna be rude. But, like, we have fun on there, and we hang out, and tonight we're gonna have a movie night. And we do that, like, at least on the weekly. We have movie nights probably more than anything else. We do movie nights. So, you don't have to talk during it. You don't have to talk at all. But you can watch the movie with us. It's fun. So, I think tonight we're watching Django Unchained. We've been talking about it for months. Or weeks. I don't even know. But, so yeah, if you don't want to miss that, you want to hang out with us, or me, or whatever, that's what we're doing. Also, Django is a really good movie if you haven't seen it, but... Okay, cool. I don't know how to hang up. I like you. You guys are great. I'm really happy to get back into read alouds. And I'm excited for the next book. I'm excited to read a book I have no idea on. This one I never read either, but, like, I had a pretty decent idea of what was going to happen because of the movie I grew up on. 2 movies I grew up on. But One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't know. I think it was something about an insane asylum or something, but I don't know. And then I just said, like, as long as there's nothing... As long as there's nothing sexual that I have to, like, read. And they said they didn't think so, so we're gonna see. But anyways, yeah, I'm gonna go. Love you guys. Stay safe and warm. It's cold right now where I am. But anyway. You're the best. I don't know how to hang up. Okay, bye!